Here's the deal. What if I told you the worst thing that ever happened to you may actually be the best thing? What if pain wasn't a bad thing? It sounds crazy, but stay with me here. This is about to get real. Every great person you admire, every legend you look up to, they've all suffered. They've been broken. Every single one of them has dealt with loss. But why do some people break? Why do some people never recover from their problems? And why do others bounce back and become unbreakable? In this video, I want to explore this idea that sometimes our greatest pain can lead to our greatest growth. And to help us understand this better, I'll be sharing a real-life story. A few years ago, I read a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And this book changed my life. Viktor Frankl was put into a concentration camp during World War II. One day he gets separated from his wife and his family. He doesn't know if they're dead or alive. His world gets flipped upside down. He's stripped naked and put into a line with hundreds of other men. That's when he realizes that this is a war that he cannot fight his way out of. So he loses his will to fight. He feels despair. He thinks about ending his own life. All he wants to do is close his eyes and go to sleep and never wake up. But then he remembers his wife. He pictures her face. And in that moment, he chooses to stay alive for just one more day to hold on to hope that he would see her again. Day after day, week after week, month after month, he holds on to that hope. Meanwhile, his body becomes weaker and weaker. He's starving. He's freezing cold. He's working long hours and not getting paid, and eventually he gets sick with typhoid fever. When he's at his lowest point, he ends up in the hospital. He lays in bed thinking about death, but then he has a breakthrough moment. He realizes that even though he's lost everything, he still has one thing left, his mind. And with his mind, he can make decisions. And right now, the decision he needs to make is to choose life. And so he does. He slowly recovers and gets discharged from the hospital. He witnesses horrors no one should ever witness. But he survives. At the end of the story, he finds out that his wife and his family didn't make it, but he did. He survived. And he found something that was even greater than hope. He found meaning. I love this story because it shows us how we have the ability to find meaning in our pain. We can turn our trauma into triumph. Now, this isn't about ignoring our feelings or pretending like everything's fine. The goal isn't to numb the pain or escape from it. Instead, it's about embracing it, acknowledging it, learning from it, and ultimately choosing to rise above it. Let me ask you this. What's the first thing most people say when they experience pain or trauma? Here's what I mean. You could have a big argument with your partner and they storm out the door. What do? Do you take some deep breaths and realize that arguments don't last forever? Or do you call them up and beg them to come back? Do you feel betrayed? Maybe you feel like they'll leave you, or maybe you feel hopeless that things will ever work out. What do you think the person you had an argument with said? To themselves, most likely they felt all those same things too. Which brings us to a quote from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who wrote Meditations. He once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." In any situation, there are two ways to react. There's the emotional reaction and there's the stoic mindset. With the emotional reaction, we get sucked into our feelings. We panic, we worry, we stress out, we give our power away to external circumstances. We let our emotions dictate how we behave. On the other hand, the Stoics, they took a different approach. They practiced self-control. They resisted the urge to give in to their emotions, and instead, they focused on what they could change, their own thoughts and actions. They knew that they couldn't control everything that happened to them, but they did have control over how they responded to these events. Now, this isn't to say that Stoics never experienced emotions. Of course they did. Even the strongest, most resilient people, they feel fear, sadness, anger, jealousy. But what sets them apart is how they choose to act despite these emotions. Not because of them, For example, when I saw my business partner get arrested in front of me, I felt shock and fear, just like anyone else would. But instead of letting those emotions control me, I decided to take action. I continued moving forward with our business plan. I hired new team members. I launched new products. I doubled down on our mission. In other words, I chose to focus on what I could change, my actions, my mindset, my commitment to our vision. And that's what allowed me to move forward and turn our company into a multi-million-dollar business. The point is this: when you embrace challenges, when you welcome obstacles, that's when you become resilient. Here's the psychological truth. Your brain actually rewires itself when you consciously endure pain. This is called neuroplasticity. Basically, it means your brain adapts to the challenges you throw at it. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, your brain will create new pathways that make it easier for you to do that thing. This is why athletes train. This is why musicians practice scales. They're literally changing the structure of their brain to become better at what they do. But what about pain? Does your brain rewire itself when you go through hard times? The answer is yes, and this is backed up by science. A study published in the journal JAMA Psychiatry found that people who experienced severe trauma, like combat veterans or sexual assault survivors, showed changes in their brain structure, specifically in areas that process emotions and regulate stress. Another study published in the British Journal of Psychology found that people who faced significant adversity in their childhood, like abuse or neglect, had changes in their brain structure that made them more resilient later in life. So what does this mean for you? It means that going through tough times, facing challenges, enduring pain, it's not a bad thing. In fact, it can make you stronger, more resilient, more adaptable. You're literally training your brain to handle whatever life throws at you. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but I want you to think about it this way. Your brain is like a muscle. When you push yourself, when you challenge yourself, that's when you grow. Think about the last time you learned a new skill, like playing an instrument or speaking a new language. At first it was hard, but as you practiced, it became easier. The same thing happens with your brain. When you push yourself, when you go through hard times, your brain adapts and becomes stronger. So here's the deal. Pain will visit you. It's inevitable. It's part of the human experience. It's a universal constant. But the question isn't if pain will visit you, but rather, will you let it break you, or will you use it to build yourself back up even stronger than before? The choice is yours. I'll close with this final thought. The fire that burns you also forges you. Viktor Frankl, the man who endured unimaginable pain in a concentration camp, he didn't just survive. He created meaning from the ashes of his experience. He went on to help millions of people around the world find meaning in their own pain. He became a beacon of hope in a world that desperately needed it. This story inspires me to see pain not as a curse, but as a blessing in disguise. Pain can be the catalyst for growth, the fuel for resilience, the forge that shapes our character. It's in the crucible of suffering that we discover our true strength, our capacity for love, our ability to connect with others on a deeper level. I know it's hard to see this when you're in the middle of your own personal winter, but trust me, spring will come. You'll look back on this moment and realize that this too shall pass. You'll realize that the pain that broke your heart also made you whole. You'll realize that the scars that defined you also made you beautiful. I know it's hard to see this when you're in the thick of it, but I promise you, with time and perspective, everything will shift. You'll find meaning in the madness. You'll find beauty in the brokenness. You'll find strength in the struggle. Just keep going. Don't give up. Don't give in. Don't give out. Hold on to hope. Hold on to faith. Hold on to your values. Hold on to who you truly are. Because I promise you, you're going to come out of this stronger, wiser, more resilient than you ever were before.